goods and services on your website with Sagicor Payment Gateway. Integrate in as little as 30 minutes. Conditions apply. The time by Sagicor Bank is
7 o'clock. It's time now for the Morning Watch with Reverend Dr. Dylan Toussaint.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, climate change could be making you sick. And in the second watch, Jamaica Census 2022. For our social media question, we ask, what makes you reluctant or willing to participate in the census? Please share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote is an island quote. And I want a fat nightingale foot tan so. It's not because of lack of fat that the nightingale's legs look so. I like that, look so. Explanation, do not judge by appearances.
Good morning, Dr. Nadine.
Good morning, Dr. Toussaint. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
Well, you can't appear. I can't appear. You can't judge me because you can't see me. Do not judge.
No. But you're doing okay, though. You're doing all right.
I'm doing good.
Yes, I can't judge you in terms of appearance this morning at all.
Right.
So I don't know if you have nightingale foot or not. I don't know. But let me move on to the first watch, which will be back in just a moment.
More family time at home means more memories that start from in the kitchen. And Gaspro is here to keep the flame alight for everyone's delight. Enjoy peace of mind with every bite, knowing that our fully operational plant and workers are always committed to your safety and take extra care in getting your gas to right where you are. Keep safe and keep cooking with Gaspro. Call the gas professionals at 888-4-GASPRO.
888-4-GASPRO. Get attached to the one you know. Gaspro, gas professionals.
Keep fully connected with Flow Fiber Fast Internet at home and on the road with LTE data and calls for a fast, reliable experience anywhere. Over 500 communities have been upgraded since 2020, making more of Jamaica Flow Fiber Fast. And with Yard and Road, get Flow Fiber Faster Yard and LTE Road for as low as $3,999 plus GCT. Visit discoverflow.co to get connected on Jamaica's largest network. Conditions apply.
Now more than ever, Protex reminds you to wash your hands. A 40-second hand wash with soap could help prevent COVID-19. Look for Protex at your nearest store.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Climate hazards such as flooding, heat waves, and drought have worsened more than half of the hundreds of known infectious diseases in people, including malaria, hantavirus, cholera, and anthrax. Now, that is an excerpt from a study recorded on nature.com. In short, climate change could be making us sick. Well, to discuss these and other related issues, we have online Dr. James Hospitalis, founder of the Earth Medic and Earth Nurse Foundation and senior public health specialist, and Mrs. Theresa Rodriguez Moody, CEO of the Jamaica Environmental Trust. Good morning to you both.
Morning. Thanks
Good
for having
morning.
me.
Good morning. Good to have you both with us. Dr. Hospitalis, let me begin with you. I'm curious, sir. I'm curious. What's behind the name Earth Medic and Earth Nurse Foundation?
Thank you very much, and good to be on the show with you today. I'm in England at the moment, where it has been incredibly hot, part of the changing climate
So I
that we face.
understand.
And
Yes.
well, I was the head of the Caribbean Public Health Agency until 3 years ago. And when I retired, I couldn't retire. I get new tires, as you would say in
Okay.
Jamaica.
Okay.
And I launched Earth Medic and Earth Nurse as a non-governmental organization to raise attention to the climate and health crisis that our world is facing, and especially our Caribbean countries. And we're not sufficiently aware of this as people, as professionals, the government, business community. We really need to raise up that awareness. So our focus is to mobilize health professionals to be white coat diplomats and advocate for patient Earth. Because, Dr. Toussaint, the
Yeah.
health and lives and the livelihoods of everybody on this planet depends on a healthy patient Earth.
Okay. So you have the medic and you have the nurse. Nurse is dealing with that. Great. 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 Dr. Rodriguez Moody, what really is climate change, though?
Morning. Thanks for having me. So, climate change
Yes.
is the change of Earth's climate over a period of time. And it's not a day to day. Some people think it's something related to the short term changes, but this is really changes that have been taking place over a long time, over 30 years or longer. And this involves change in temperature, change in rainfall patterns, and changing sea surface temperatures, and all of this will change our day-to-day weather, right? And
Mm,
this is really the link. A lot of people probably initially, when they were talking about climate change, didn't realize that there was a connection with human health. But because climate change affects things like your air quality, your water quality, your food availability, and shelter where you're able to live, then it affects your health.
yes. So let me get it clear, Dr. Rodriguez. You're saying it's a change in temperature, etc. Um, couldn't it be argued that this has been happening for years from creation?
Well, when you think about climate change, yes, over there are cycles over very long term. But when we're talking about climate change, it's more rapid and it's due to anthropogenic, meaning man-made influences, right? So
Uh-huh.
when we're burning fossil fuels, when we um, are disturbing those important carbon sinks, such as your rainforests, that is disturbing the carbon, releasing it. We're putting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and that is causing the temperature to increase more rapidly than we're able to cope. That is causing the rainfall patterns to change and to become more variable than we're able to cope and adapt, right? So this is a key component, and I should have said that initially, that climate change is related to what we're experiencing today is related to the man-made influences of burning more and more greenhouse gases or emitting more and more greenhouse gases, which is largely related to greenhouse fossil fuels.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Hospitalis, mention was made, of course, and our focus is on the health side effects. How really, I want us to drill down on that. How really is our health affected by climate change? Can you give us some specifics?
Yes, that's a very good question, Dr. Toussaint. As Dr. Moody, or do I call it Teresa? As Teresa was saying, climate change is the long-term change in weather patterns where we're seeing more heat, we're seeing more powerful storms and hurricanes, we're seeing more floods, we're seeing sea level rise, we're seeing rise in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So, okay, so your question is still, how does that change disease and health issues? Well, what those changes do is they change our environment. They make for more heat waves, and that can make you sick. Heat illness, heat stroke, heat exhaustion, especially older people, pregnant women. They change the seasons, so you have different allergens in the air, and you can get more asthma, and you can get more allergies. Some of the ways in which viewers and people in the Caribbean will be familiar are the vector-borne diseases that are spread by mosquitoes. So that increase in heat and increase in rainfall makes for more mosquitoes. And so you increase the risk of dengue fever, chikungunya, Zika. If you go to America, I was in New York last week and I was bitten by some Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus mosquitoes in my son-in-law's backyard in Long Island. That never used to happen. But because of the warming, you're finding that these mosquitoes are breeding, or the ticks that transmit Lyme disease and so on, they're going to areas that they never used to be before. And so suddenly now you're having Lyme disease, dengue in areas that you may not have had it before. That's a pathway that I'm describing. So the article speaks to about 1,000 different pathways in which the changing climate is changing the environment in which we live, and that then affects our health. Does that make it clearer?
Yes, it does. What about COVID-19 though, Dr. Hospitalis? Is there a relation with
Yes, you
climate
can
change?
read a commentary I wrote in the British Medical Journal about this, that COVID-19 is a wake-up call. And what is the connection? Well, part of the process of climate change is seeing us humans destroying forest, wetlands, and that's where a lot of viruses are harbored that then jump from the animals to people. And COVID originated almost certainly in a wild animal, probably in a bat in China, and then spread to human beings. If you'd allow me to just keep on this line and length, what is happening in the whole world is and this is part of this study, is that the forces that are lined up for the world to have more deadly pandemics are aligned. What do I mean by that? Human animal contact is increasing as we encroach on the forests and we destroy nature. The droughts that sometimes happen and the drying drives the animals out of their areas. They have to look for food. So the bushfires, the forest fires destroys animal habitat. So they have to move to find somewhere to live or somewhere to eat. And that human animal contact increasing is a major force driving us towards more deadly pandemics. As I already mentioned, with the increased heat, you find mosquitoes and ticks and other vectors of disease are multiplying more easily and better able to transmit disease. So there are lots of links that when you start to think about it, you go, oh my God, we're not being good stewards of this planet, and there are a lot of consequences. Another disease we see in the Caribbean, leptospirosis, that is associated with rats and other animals and floodwaters and stagnant water. Well, with climate change, we're seeing increased rainfall, increased flooding, and people then have to spend time in that floodwater. In Guyana a few years ago, there was a flood that lasted about 6 weeks. People had to move animals into their house because it was a flat area with no hills or anything. And 6 weeks of walking around in floodwater, there was a large outbreak of leptospirosis. So those are some examples of how the infectious diseases can be affected. We can talk also about how some of the non-infectious diseases are affected by a changing climate.
Yes. Okay. Well, hold those thoughts, please. We are up on a break, lady and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
Get better coverage for yourself and your family as low as $800 a month. The Tie by Jane Life Vest from Jane Life Insurance is
7:15 and a half.
Juicy patty them double up the choices. And we know say you a go like it. And you face start your morning off right with a cup of porridge full up of beer niceness. Two combination which one we try first. When you a go to school or you a go to work or what we double can fit twice the flavor. Or could have the pecan you end up a paper. Try our pecan porridge. That's peanut mixed with hominy. Or our double corn porridge. That's hominy mixed with cornmeal. Try it today at Juicy Patties.
Available at participating stores.
Make an impact on your career. Earn real money. Get 3 to 4 local and international certification in practical nursing and early childhood education with free CXC or CAPE subjects in 6 to 12 months at Distinction College, located at 26 Hagley Park Road, Kingston, 6 Nugent Street, Spanish Town, and Ocho Rios. Earn global certificates in 3 months in geriatric nursing, phlebotomy, childcare. We have the lowest school fees around. Classes begin very soon. Call us 356-4167.
Hello! Rata just got better with a new brand Rata Bundle on Digicel, Jamaica's #1 LTE network. Serious? Get up to 12 gigabytes of NU data, up to 2,000 minutes for calls, plus dedicated data on Digicel apps, which now includes data for Spotify, Apple Music, and HBO Max. There's no better plan for all your content needs this summer. Say less. Me gonna get a plan up on the My Digicel app, Mr. Rata. Activate a Prime Rata Bundle today for as low as $175.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And in this, the first watch, we have been discussing climate change, and we're asking, could climate change be making you sick? And in so doing, we have online Dr. James Hospitalis, founder of Earth Medic and Earth Nurse Foundation. And we also have Dr. Teresa Rodriguez Moody, CEO of Jamaica Environment Trust. Welcome back to both of you. Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Rodriguez Moody, I gather that you are also an environmental scientist, correct?
Yes, I am.
Yes, right. Now, as such, can you give us an idea of how scientists came to this conclusion that we have been discussing? Their methods, experimentation, and evaluation. How was that done?
Boy, I mean, as I said, it's not something that we typically or initially well understood, but they have been looking at climate change and human pathogens, right?
Pathogens, yes.
Right? And they have been looking at, the links between some of the diseases that are increasing over time. So, as scientists, you like to look at correlations and, for example, what is happening and what are the relationships. And as we're, I think we heard earlier that we're seeing a lot more increases in heat strokes, in heat-related illnesses. We're seeing a lot more of those infectious vector-borne diseases. And now we're seeing a rise in these infectious diseases. And the question has been asked, as scientists, you ask these questions: what's the link? What's the what is the cause behind it? And you're clearly seeing that as we see changes in temperature, as we see an increase in, say, rainfall, as the floods, as we heard the example of Guyana, as we see the increases in heat, we're seeing a rise in these cases, and you see these links. So this is part of, the general approach when you're looking at what are what the trends that we're observing and why they're occurring.
Yes. And I'm still with you, Dr. Rodriguez Moody. And I'm going to also ask Dr. Hospitalis the same question. Because how would you respond to those who argue that environmentalists like yourselves are confusing correlation with causation?
That's a good
For
question.
me or for? Oh, go ahead.
You're,
All right,
you're
Dr.
asking me or you're asking
Hospitalis.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, I was asking Dr. Rodriguez first, but she's yielding to you first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the scientists look at and study this in a number of ways. One is direct observation, where you already know that there are well-established cause and effect pathways that flooding increases the risk of leptospirosis, and climate change is bringing more rainfall and flooding. There's no doubt about that. And therefore, you say, well, if you get more flooding, you're going to see more of these kinds of diseases. And then you observe that it happens. So you're putting several things together, and you come down on the side of this is what is causing it. They also use modeling to model what will happen based on small increases in temperature, for example, to mosquitoes breeding. But the other point I want to make is climate is working in different pathways. It can directly affect you and your health. You can be sick with anxiety if your business place wash away in a flood or in a hurricane. The mental health impacts of this are very easy to understand. Your house, your business place gone, you lost loved ones, you're sick with mental problems for months, for years sometimes. The people in Abaco, in the Bahamas, who lost their house, in Dorian, some of them are still not back in that house. People in Antigua, Barbuda, in Dominica, they're still not back in their proper house. So you can see that the mental impact of that is going to be significant. The direct impact of the heat and the excess heat on an outdoor laborer, on an old lady, on a woman who is pregnant, these are things that we already well know. So when you can see climate is changing these parameters, you say, oh my gosh, we are going to have more of this problem or that problem. And you have a responsibility then from a public health and environmental point of view to warn the population and to put in place measures that will allow you to cope. But let me touch on another more tortuous pathway, what we call the indirect impacts of climate change. So take the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which has gone from 300 and some odd parts per million to over 422 parts per million. It hasn't been like that for about 400,000 or 500,000 years, a long time. What is Doc talking about? Well, I can tell you something, if I can practice my my patois a little bit. What we've realized is if you grow crops in higher levels of carbon dioxide, they produce less zinc, less protein, less iron. Oh, I didn't know that. So that you have the food is less nutritious. So the baby and the child and the family that is really on the borderline because of economic circumstances, what climate will do is make that child more at risk of malnutrition, more at risk of iron deficiency, anemia, more at risk of particular deficiencies in as a result of the diet. So you see, that's another pathway, the indirect pathway. When in Trinidad recently, headline, 200,000 customers cut off from water. Why? Because we had unprecedented rain and flooding, and the Water and Sewage Authority had to shut down their pumps because the pumps were being flooded with silt and dirt and debris, so they couldn't operate the pump. Well, if you have no water, you may have to rely on stored water, you may be using unclean water, and your risk of disease goes up. So that's an indirect impact. We talk about climate change, Dr. Toussaint, as a threat multiplier. Everything is not directly due to it, but it is multiplying other threats, and especially those who are most vulnerable, elderly people, poor people who don't have the means to cope. That's who's taking the greater burden.
Yeah. I don't know if Dr. Rodriguez Moody wants to expand on that, but I just want to therefore close. I know we are couple minutes to closure. What do we do then, or what should be done by human beings to effectively address the concerns we have expressed so far? Dr. Rodriguez Moody.
Well, I want to add to what we just heard. I just want to make this statement that climate
Mhm.
change is the single biggest threat that we are facing, that humanity is facing, right? Now, if we thought that COVID-19 was a challenge, you can't really develop a vaccine for climate change. Well, you can't develop a vaccine for climate change, right?
Right.
But what can you do? It's not doom and gloom. It's not too late. It is urgent that we act, but it is not too late. There's a famous saying that we are the last generation that can do anything about the impacts of climate change. And
Mhm.
this is why we can't sit around and argue about, is it real? Is it not real? Is it causing this? Is it not causing this? No. We have to be working towards finding solutions. Now, there are different things that we can do. We can look at adaptation, which is how can we cope with the impacts. That's looking at some long-term solutions that help us to better able to deal with the changing rainfall patterns, changing temperatures, and that's things like how we build the where we build. In terms of when I say how we build, if you're in an area that is susceptible to heavy rainfall and flooding,
Mhm.
the way we construct homes have to change. How we build with maybe low roofs or the zinc roofs in terms of hurricanes and so forth, we have to change that. So the adaptation helps us to better able to deal with the impacts of climate change. So you're not changing it, you're able to deal with it better. The mitigation strategies are more focused on trying to prevent or to slow the actual impacts of climate change. So what are the causes of climate change? Well, spoke about greenhouse gas emissions. So therefore what we do is how can we reduce the impacts, because what we really need to be focused on is limiting the rate of increase in temperature. And
Mhm.
this is why this phrase was coined, 1.5 to stay alive. Scientists recognize that we cannot pass 1.5 degrees Celsius rate of increase, right? Now, unfortunately, we are on a pathway to greater increases, and that could be catastrophic in terms of the impacts. But it still doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop. So this is why you're seeing mitigation strategies that involve moving us away from the use of fossil fuels, looking at renewable energies, looking at, instead of trying to reduce the amount of cars that use fossil fuels, or even just reducing the amount of cars on our road, looking at electric vehicles and so forth. So that is an important mitigation strategy, but you can't do
Mhm.
one or the other, or rather you should
Yeah.
not do one or the other. You have to be doing a combination. And Jamaica, small island country, a small island state like ourselves, we cannot only think that mitigation is going to save us, because we are so small, we're surrounded by water, and we have to be focusing on mitigation and on adaptation, sorry, at the same time. So it's a combination of the two that we have to be focused on, particularly the vulnerable countries like ourselves, the small island states that are like ourselves. Adaptation is a very important strategy that we have to be focused on.
Yes. Before I throw to Dr. Hospitalis, where you said 1.5 to stay alive. Where are we now? What figure are
Well,
we now?
we're closer to passing two, as far as
Wow.
I understand, because we're not being as ambitious. And I'm not, when I say we, I'm not just talking about Jamaica. I'm talking about the big countries that are big emitters and so forth. They have a big role to play here as well. So when they make these commitments, these national determined contributions, that this is as part of the Paris Agreement, this is what I am going to do as a contributing state. I'm going to cut my emissions by 30% or by 50%. They have to be ambitious, meaning you have to set high targets, because really that's what we need to be doing. As I said, it's an urgent situation. So we can't just play it safe, and we have to be really pushing the envelope in terms of making big changes in our transportation sector, in our energy
Yeah.
sector, and so
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dr. Hospitalis, half a minute. Half a minute. Final thoughts.
One of the most important things we can do is what you're doing about it right now. Talk about it. We haven't been talking about this climate and health and what it means for people enough. At a personal level, you can eat less meat, you can eat a more plant-based diet, you can ride or walk to school or to work to stop using fossil fuels. You can vote for politicians who have climate-friendly policies. You can demand climate-friendly products and business services from the private sector. You can stop banking with banks that are heavily invested in fossil fuels. So actually, there are a lot of things we can do as citizens in our communities, in our families, that we to adapt and to mitigate.
Thank you. Okay, thank you both for joining us. Very informative discussion. Dr. Theresa Rodriguez Moody and Dr. James Hospitalis. Have a productive and safe day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
The NHF is here for you, helping Jamaican residents pay less for medication with the NHF card. The time by the National Health Fund is
7:31 on the Sound of Love.
Talk to Jane Bank today to find out about achieving your own sweet home in 30 days. The time by Jane Bank Mortgage is
7:31 and a half.
Love 101 presents Facts on Monkeypox. The monkeypox virus comes from the same family of viruses as smallpox, but it is not related to chickenpox. Common symptoms of monkeypox are fever, headache, muscle aches, and swollen lymph nodes. Monkeypox also causes a rash that looks like raised bumps on the skin. The virus typically spreads through bodily fluids or by touching the rash of someone who has monkeypox. Animals can also pass the virus to humans either by being scratched or bitten by the animal or by preparing, eating meat, or using products from an infected animal. That was Facts on Monkeypox, presented by Love 101 FM.
More family time at home means more memories that start from in the kitchen. And Gaspro is here to keep the flame alight for everyone's delight. Enjoy peace of mind with every bite, knowing that our fully operational plant and workers are always committed to your safety and take extra care in getting your gas to right where you are. Keep safe and keep cooking with Gaspro. Call the gas professionals at 888-4-GASPRO.
8884-GASPRO. Get attached to the one you know. Gaspro, the gas professionals.
Monkeypox is in Jamaica. If you are experiencing fever, intense headache, muscle aches, and or rash on the skin, you must isolate immediately and call ahead to your health center or doctor before visiting. All members of the public should wear a mask, frequently wash hands, and practice physical distancing. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now let's look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, we see that under growth and jobs, Angelique Chen designs device to simplify small space farming. Interesting. And then the PM says government unable to resolve a housing crisis on its own. We also see in the Gleaner agony over double drowning tragedy. Clarendon family gripped with grief after brothers leap from US bridge. And then in the Observer, disgrace. Public defender tags PICA RGD Criminal Records Office for causing Jamaicans most pain. We also see in the Observer, Bunting blasts government for seeking consensus on crime. There must be more to that story than what we just saw there. Also, major traffic changes on Waltham Park Road. Those are some of the major stories in our newspapers. Well, coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What makes you reluctant or willing to participate in the census? Please leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. We'll be right back.
Shake and go with two shake. Shake and go. Grab a two shake and go. When me have to put in the work, but I'm moving slow. Grab a two shake and go. School time and on job time. Have to study hard, brain full time. Grab a two shake and go. When we up in the gym, we have to stay healthy and fit. Grab a two shake and go. Shake and go with two shake. Packed with 9 grams of protein, 24 key vitamins and minerals to keep you going. Grab a two shake and go.
Win a bag of cash for back to school with Alliance MoneyGram Money Transfer. Every MoneyGram Money Transfer you collect at an Alliance agent from now until September 9 gives you a chance to win a share of $2.8 million in cash.
That's a bag of cash.
10 winners of $20,000 from each parish, right in time for back to school from Alliance.
A bag of things for back to school.
Alliance, a member of Sagicor Group Jamaica. Conditions apply.
Tell me where you get the money transferred.
Alliance.
Let's get up and go.
The I Love Summer Road Tours and Pull-Ups come to a close this coming Saturday, August 20, with the big one in cool Mandeville. Oh yes, it's time to wrap up the ILS Road Tour, and we're doing it in fine style. Mandeville, are you ready for the exciting music-filling, foot-stomping, belly-buster laughing, enough niceness in the I Love Summer Road Tour? It's happening this coming Saturday, August 20. You can't afford to miss it, and it will be live on Love 101 FM, the family station. See you there.
I love summer. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Nadine for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answer today's question: what makes you reluctant or willing to participate in the census? Nadine.
Right, we have a few responses on WhatsApp. Let's see.
Dr. Toussaint, good morning. Dr. Nadine, I have always been willing. Good morning, Dr. Toussaint. Good morning, Dr. Nadine.
Good morning. Good morning.
I have always been willing and will continue to be willing to participate in the census. I believe that without census taking, there can, will never be the statistics to make meaningful, relevant, and up-to-date and comprehensive national planning. Yes, thank you very much.
Then why many people are reluctant to participate in the census? It's the type of question that they ask. Sometimes it's some personal question. Sometimes they go too deep into your personal life when you're not willing to share certain stuff. So that's why many people do not participate in it.
All right, those 2 voice notes. Then we had from Cherry. She says, I'm willing to do the census. From an early age, I was taught and learned what the census is about and the importance and value of doing a census. It gives the government clear knowledge of housing, occupancy, and genuinely needed assistance as long as individuals give the correct information. All the information is kept private, and workers must respect the privacy of the citizens. If they breach, they can face the law. And on Facebook, Eunice says, because she just says because it don't help our situation sometimes.
Is that it, Nadine?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Interesting comments there on the census. Well, as we segue listeners into the second watch, beginning September 13 and through to December 2022, the Jamaica National Census will be conducted, and that's the population and the housing census. It's done every 10 years by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin. More than 7,500 census takers will head to the streets, knocking on our doors and gates to gather key socio-demographic information. Well, to further enlighten us about matters relating to this census, we have joining us Mrs. Georgia Garvey Green, Manager of Corporate Communications at Statin. Good morning, Mrs. Garvey Green. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you.
Good to have you with us again. Last time I think you're with, at least with me, was in March, and so much has taken place. Right, good to have you with us again. Okay, now, Mrs. Garvey Green, we know that there has been a delay this time around because of COVID. But why is the census taken every 10 years? Why not more or less frequently?
Okay, the census in Jamaica is taken every 10 years because a lot of planning, a lot of resources go into conducting the census. There are some countries who they do the census once every 5 years. But in Jamaica and in most countries across the world, it is done once every 10 years. And there's what is called a census round, where every country, there's a set particular time where every country prepares and conducts their census. So for us in Jamaica, what is also unique is that we do a population census and a housing census. And planning for the census takes up to 5-6 years for us to plan at Statin and prepare to go into the field to conduct the census.
Okay. So they need the 10 years span to deal with this adequately. That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
No more, no less. Okay.
Right.
All right.
To do the planning and going into the field and analyzing the data. Yes.
Right. Now, I know that the census takers have been trained and ready to go. I'd like for you to walk us through the census taking process. When a census taker, for example, knocks on our gate or our doors or rings our bell, how will we know that that individual or those individuals are legitimate census takers?
All right. So the census taker who will come to your house is equipped with a census identification card, and you as the householder has a right and a responsibility to request to see the census identification card. This outlines the census taker name, and we have also put in place certain safeguards. So if you still have apprehension as to the legitimacy of this person, you can, one, go on our website and search for that person's name, and you will see a picture of that census taker, so you can verify if that's this legitimate census taker. There's also the census taker. You can request to have the census taker supervisor's number, where you can call to verify if that person is the census taker. And you can also call our head office to verify if that person is the census taker. They will also be properly branded in Statin. Right. So we'll give them Statin branding materials, so you will be able to identify them. So we're ensuring that our census takers are visible and that the householders have sufficient information to verify whether or not that person standing at your gate is indeed a census taker.
What about their dress code? Will they be wearing any t-shirt or shirt branded with Statin on it?
For now, we are working on getting them proper census branded vests so that persons can identify them. It's 7,500 census takers, so the process is taking a little while, but I'm sure that by Census Day, we will have our census takers properly branded.
Okay. What type of questions should we expect to be asked? I'm sure you heard one of the callers or responders mentioned about questions being too personal. What kind of questions should we expect?
All right. So that is a concern of a lot of persons having done various stakeholder engagements.
Tell you what.
Persons,
Tell you what, Mrs. Garvey Green. We are at 7:45. We're up on a break. Could you hold that thought? We'll be right back.
sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Get ready for another Testimony Tuesday inside Alive, 1 to 5 August 16. 2 o'clock will be time for Prayer Blast. More prayer, more power. 2:15 is that the evidence. We bring you another powerhouse testimony of God's goodness. Then at 3 p.m., we go behind the pulpit of Pastor Wilfred Forbes of the Good Look Church of God Ministry. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. with me, your host, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101, Jamaica 60.
Hermeneutics is the process to determine and understand the meaning of biblical text. In order for an interpreter to understand the work of another author, they must familiarize themselves with the historical context in which the author published their thoughts. So, with all that said, let's explore, investigate, unmask, and reveal. Tuesday, August 16 on The Rock, join host Bishop Hero Steve Blair and guests Pastor Barry Hall and Reverend Dr. Michael Friday as they discuss the topic hermeneutics. That's The Rock, Tuesday, August 16 at 10 a.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and this is the second watch, the second half of the second watch, actually. We are discussing or continuing to discuss Jamaica Census 2022, and in so doing, we have online Mrs. Georgia Garvey Green, Manager of Corporate Communications at Statin. Before the break, Mrs. Garvey Green, you were telling us about some of the questions we could expect to be asked. Please go ahead.
All right. So the census questionnaire, there are two types of census questionnaires that are administered. There's a household questionnaire and there's the individual questionnaire. So on the household side, and these questionnaires were developed in partnership with our stakeholders, and they're in accordance with international standards as well. So for example, we'll ask about educational attainment. We'll also ask about the source of lighting for the house. So while we're not interested in whether or not, for example, you're legally or illegally connected, we want to know what is the source of lighting that you use in the house. We also ask about how many rooms are in the house and how many rooms are used for sleeping. We also ask about the toilet facilities that you have in the house. Right. And also how many persons are living in the house. And these questions, while some questions may seem intrusive, these questions help us to better understand the conditions under which our people are living so that we can have the data, and the various ministries, agencies, and departments can now use this data to make policies, programs, and services available for
Mrs. Garvey Green. Mrs. Garvey Green, what about those who say, you're being just too inquisitive in our business? I don't want you to know how many people live in my house and what kind of our bathroom stay and all them things. What's your response to that? Can they say no? I prefer not to be asked that question, or I will not answer that question. Would that be an issue?
What we try to do is to explain to persons why we are asking these questions and help persons to see the bigger picture, right? You can refuse to answer a question, but we do not want that to be the first resort. So for example, when COVID came about and our students had to, the Ministry of Education had to move online with their education program, they had to use census data on information and communication technology to understand how many households had access to, for example, a laptop, a desktop, the computer that they have access to, the internet penetration. So back then, when we were asking these questions, persons may say, "Oh, why do you want to know how many computers or the type of computer that we have in the house?" But we saw where COVID came upon us, and we actually needed that type of information to move our education system forward and to ensure that our students were able to continue with their education. So they use census data along with other data to make informed decisions. So we encourage persons, some of the questions you may deem to be intrusive, but remember, we do not publish information on individuals. So if you tell me that you have 6 rooms, or if you have a 60-inch flat screen television, nobody will know that Georgia Garvey Green has a 50-inch or 60-inch flat screen television in her house. What we publish is in a aggregated fashion, and no individual data is divulged.
The whole thing about how many persons are living in the house, I want to drill down on that a little bit. What about visiting relationships? Because if somebody comes and stays for 3 days per week or only
Okay.
4 days per week, how is that assessed in terms of if he or she lives there?
All right. So we count persons at their usual place of residence, and this is where they spend most of the nights during the week. So you're
Nights, not days, nights. That's
right,
intentional, what you just said?
right, where you spend most of your nights during the week.
Okay, okay,
Right.
okay. Yes. Do they need to enter our home at all, Mrs. Garvey Green?
No, the census taker does not need to literally come into your home. But what we ask is that you be courteous to the census taker, be forthcoming to the census taker. Maybe you answer the questions at the gates, on your veranda. You do not literally have to invite this person in your house and walk them around, for example, to show them proof of how many rooms you have in your house, etc. We just ask that persons be forthcoming and be welcoming to the census taker.
And one of our listeners is inquiring about salary. Will they be asked about your salary, your income?
So there is a section on the questionnaire that speaks to economic activity, and they do ask about salary, and you can give a base point of your salary. But that question is a very important question also, because at starting throughout the years and having responsibility also for the library, that is a question that persons call and request data on. What are the salary scales between certain professional bandwidths? And oftentimes we're unable to give the salary scale because persons refuse to respond to that particular question.
Hmm. And understandably so. I mean, this
Yes,
is very intrusive for me. So they're asking for specifics there, or is it a range they'll be asking?
you can give a range. Because
But you
often,
also,
I was just
yeah,
saying
sorry,
that
go ahead.
oftentimes persons may not, remember the annual salary, etc. So you can give a range.
Right. And again, you have the right to say no. You will not be given any information for that question.
Right. But again, we do encourage persons to answer the questions honestly and to be forthcoming and to answer as many questions as possible, because this is the data that we will have basically for the next 10 years to plan not only for our future but for our children's future as well. And also of note, our children also rely on census data. You would be surprised. Our PEP students, our CAPE students, our CXC students, our nursing practical students rely
Mm,
on our census data when they're going into the communities to have a better understanding of the community that you're going to serve. So persons may say that, oh, I don't see how this information benefits me. But the nursing practical student who will be placed in the health center next that serves your community requires this data to better prepare to serve you and the community.
Yes, and I have other questions to ask, but I was just wondering if you had any more to give us any more information in regards to the questions that may be asked. You'd like to say more on that in terms of other things? Would they ask about you, how many children you have, and all of those things?
Right, because it's a count. So they ask about how many children you have. They ask about religious affiliation. We ask about uh, mode of transportation. So your usual mode of transportation. We ask questions about ICT garbage collection, your mode. How do you dispose of your garbage, whether private, whether you burn, whether you have regular collection. We also ask questions about source of water for drinking, educational attainment. So we have quite a number of areas that we cover under both the individual and the household questionnaire. And as I said, it was constructed in consultation with our key stakeholders who use the data and also based on international best practices.
How long should the average visit take?
All right, so that depends on the number of persons in your household because for a the individual questionnaire is administered to everyone living in that household, and then there's a household questionnaire. So for example, if you have three persons in your household, there will be three individual questionnaire plus one household questionnaire. And come again, some questions may not relate to you, and with the use of tablets now as opposed to the paper-based questionnaire that we used to administer, you will have some skip questions. So if you answer a particular way for one question, then it automatically reads that the question does not pertain to you, so it skip it. So it will make the process a little bit more quicker.
And as you speak about tablets, the technology and everything, wouldn't that make some people less willing to give information in regards to confidentiality? Because just by the press of a button, their information will be sent to wherever.
Okay. So we have been using tablets in our both our household and our business surveys, but it's the first time that we will be using tablets to collect census information. And in our regular surveys, persons are still willing to give data, to give the information, and we have put measures in place. Our IT department have put measures in place to ensure that the data that persons give, it is kept confidential, it is secured, and therefore I would want to allay the fears that persons may have as it relates to us using tablets.
And as we close, I'm sure that some of the census takers have challenges with us. Who they come to our homes and our workplaces. Can you just tell us some of those challenges and how we can make their job easier and quicker?
All right. So we do have persons, and some persons do have their reasons who are hesitant, who may be unwelcoming to our census takers. They, as you said, some persons may see it as intrusive, may say that they don't see any benefit. So why is the census taker coming to my house? I don't want to have anything to do with the census. But I just want to implore every Jamaican, every person, sorry, living in Jamaica, that the census is important. It is our most extensive source of data that we have on our country. Almost everybody rely on census data or have been impacted by census data at some particular time. Transportation, healthcare, education, our children, housing, private sector, census data impacts everybody. And we want to encourage persons to be open to the census taker, welcome the census taker, and be as forthcoming as possible to the census taker. Because census taking, yes,
It's
it is
important.
a challenging
Yes.
exercise.
A fitting note on which to end. We want to thank you so very much, Mrs. Garvey Green, for joining us. And all the best with the census taking this year.
Thank you very much. And remember, you count, me count, all our count in the census.
All our count. Bless you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596 to 7. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Miss Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, giving a shout out to Pastor Braham, Sister Braham, and the other members of the Grace Gospel Hall as their church celebrates its 60th anniversary. I was truly blessed being with you last Sunday. I now hand you back to Love in the Morning with Dr. Nadine Blair.
Thank you. God bless you, Reverend Dr. Toussaint. Okay, thank you for listening. This is Love 101.
The NHF is here for you, helping Jamaican residents